Hello guys, welcome to today's Sports Psychology Screencast. Today's focus is going to be on the individual difference of social facilitation. Now, social facilitation is directly linked to the audience. Okay, so the overall topic title is called social facilitation. So we're going to have a look at what that term social facilitation means, and then another term called social inhibition. All of us will be aware that the audience has an effect on our performance. What we've looked at so far is this idea of arousal. So we've looked at different arousal theories. We've also looked at aggression leading to an increase in arousal. What we're going to do now is look at how an increase in arousal when an audience is present can either lead to a positive or negative performance. And as you can see down here, the theory behind audience-based arousal basically proposes that you will either have a positive effect on your performance or a negative effect on your performance depending upon your personality type, your stage of learning, and the classification of skills that you are performing. On top of this, we'll have a quick look at the evaluation apprehension theory, which is another theory behind the audience, and then finally we'll have a look at some strategies that can help us minimize the negative effects of the audience. Okay, so that's what you have to be able to do by the end of the social facilitation lesson. It's worth saying at time of recording for the 2019-20 A-level PE exam, this is an unexamined area, so it's really important that you kind of take this in, go back over and go to the social facilitation screencast, revision screencast after you've done this. Okay, so we go on from here then. First one, let's get our definition sorted then. So social facilitation is the audience. Okay, that's the first thing we have to do. As soon as we see these terms, we know it's linked to the audience. So basically, the first thing behind everything with regard to social facilitation is the presence of an audience leads to an increase in arousal. I think that's not in doubt, really. When you have a big crowd coming to watch you, your arousal will automatically really spike up a little bit. Now, this audience-based arousal can lead to positive or negative effects on performance. So some people will excel in front of a crowd, other people will fall to pieces in front of a crowd. So let's have a look at those in particular then. So the positive effect of the audience has a name, which is the name of the topic title, which is social facilitation. What's that mean? Well, it means facilitation. Facilitate something means it helps something. Okay, so if you're thinking this, if for social, crowd, facilitation, help. So the crowd is going to help our performance. It's going to increase our performance. So whenever we're talking about the positive effects of the audience, we're talking about social facilitation. Now, this might be in the most simplest form. Scoring a penalty in a cup final. Scoring a free throw, a really important free throw in a cup final. Scoring a penalty corner in a cup final. And the reason why I put cup final there, because there might be a chance that there is more of a crowd at a cup final. Okay, so that is the reason why I've put that there. Now, on the flip side to that, of course, is you could have the negative effect of the audience. So the negative effect of the audience is called social inhibition. E.g., you become inhibited, withdrawn in a social situation, e.g. when the crowd is there. So the negative effect of the audience on performance is social inhibition. And this could be exactly the same penalty, and I'm sure some of you have been in this situation. Bang them in training, whatever you're doing all the time. As soon as a crowd is there, this can cause you to miss the penalty in a cup final. And I suppose you should add to this in front of a crowd. Okay, so there's your basic terms. Massively important, you know the difference between social facilitation and social inhibition. I think it's always just worth remembering. Audience equals arousal increase. Arousal increase equals increased or decreased performance. Increased social facilitation, decreased social inhibition. Okay, right, let's move on. So, some of the information you got from arousal theories would have told you that kind of there are certain variables that can dictate performance a little bit. So what we have to look at with social facilitation and social inhibition, we're already aware that the audience-based arousal can lead to an increase or decrease in performance. We're aware that these terms are social facilitation and social inhibition. So let's have a look then at the variables according to this approach, which dictate whether your performance is positive in front of a crowd or negative. So, increased performance, decreased performance. If we go down to here, the three variables that are going to dictate whether your performance is increased or decreased are personality, ability, and task type. So if I said to you, put these here now, if this side here then is social facilitation, you've got positive pat here. You can use that as a way to remember it. P-A-T, positive pat in front of your audience-based arousal, negative pat. Okay, so you've got social inhibition there. And I wonder now, with your knowledge of arousal theories, do you feel like you could have a go at working out which personality types might lead to an increased performance and which personality type might lead to a decreased performance? Likewise with ability, obviously it's probably better to use stages of learning, but ability is fine, and then task type on there. So see if you could do that. Maybe that's a little task to do now. I'm hoping your prior knowledge will allow you to accelerate through this relatively quickly. As we move on from there then, let's have a look at them, split up them. So if we start off then, positive effect of audience on performance, as we know, is called social facilitation. Just as a recap, audience will lead to an increased arousal, which will increase performance if, and now we have to apply the PAT principle and make sure we understand the difference between personality, ability, task type. So when we are in front of a crowd, our arousal goes up, we're pumped up. This will increase performance, particularly if your personality is extrovert. And this is because of a less sensitive reticular activating system in the brain, as we've talked about in lessons. So on top of that, if your ability level is high or you're an autonomous performer, because this means that you'll have a well-learned motor program, you have learned the skill that you are performing. Okay, it's fluent, as we know, with these kind of characteristics underpinning the autonomous stage of learning. Finally, we've got task type. So if a task type is gross and simple, okay, it uses large muscle movements and it has a low perceptual load or information processing. So if we just keep that in our head, that will make sense. So what we're thinking of here, I'm going to ask you when you come into lesson really to make sure that you have got an example of some gross and simple tasks. A lot of people, when we did a 10-mark question on arousal theories linked to classification of skills, a lot of people were marked down because they didn't put examples and dissect their examples to gross and simple. So give some examples of things that are extremely gross, that have used large muscle movements, or simple, that has low perceptual load, very little information processing. And think of those examples and then start to think, right, if you're in front of an audience, why might they perform better? So when you come in, I'm expecting you to have a couple of these with you. Okay, so if you're looking to remember this, okay, obviously the positive effect of audience-based arousal is called social facilitation. So when you think about that, you can think of positive pat then, the smiley face there. You then need to be able to apply the word personality, ability, task type. Let's move on from there then. So if we go to this bit, so our next focus then is looking at, there's a slight mistake on here, so that's supposed to be the negative effect of audience on performance. So you can just change that for me. So negative effect of audience on performance, called social inhibition. Okay, so social inhibition, remember, is when we are in front of a crowd, our performance is inhibited, it's withdrawn, it's reduced. And an audience will lead to an increase in arousal, which will decrease performance if. Now this now talks about the negative part, so it should be relatively straightforward. So if I got you go through here, the first one, our personality is introvert, because this is due to the highly sensitive reticular activating system. So this means in front of an audience, you would have been there before, okay. Some people are introverted, and if you have to stand up and give an answer, say in front of a class, in an educational setting, you can feel your brain going crazy. Sometimes you have a brain blank. Okay, it's not just introverts that have this, but it certainly accentuates it, I suppose. So that's why their performance will decrease if you're an introvert. On top of that, if your ability level is low, or you're a cognitive stage learner, this is because the player has, or the person has, a poorly learned motor program. Okay, so they have not learned the skill, therefore in front of a crowd and arousal goes up, the performance is really low. It's probably worse than it would be if a crowd wasn't there. And finally, we've got our task types now. So what task types, when we're in front of an audience and our arousal goes up, will be diminished, okay, or decreased? Well, of course, it's going to be looking at fine and complex. And the reason why is because fine and complex tasks use small, intricate muscle movements, okay, and they have a high perceptual load and information processing, which can cause us problems. So, negative effect, make sure you've changed that. Audience on performance, social inhibition, negative PAT, and then we've got to be able to apply that to the key principles there. Okay, so if that's the main approach, the main bulk of social facilitation or the audience, I'm just going to quickly go through one other theory, which is extremely important for the summer exam and of course for your learning based around the audience. So if we go from here then, the other theory we're going to have a look at is something called evaluation apprehension. Now, evaluation apprehension doesn't have any positive implications. Now, apprehension tells us that it's a negative thing. So when you're apprehensive, it's often a negative thing. Evaluation means you're being judged. Okay, so this link to the audience basically says that it's a negative effect of the audience that is judging a performer or performance. Okay, so that is the difference between this one. Now, I'm hoping people can see I've had this situation. Have you ever had a situation, let's say, it could be the fact you're doing a moderation at GCSE PE and you know that people were judging your performance, okay, and it has a negative effect because you know someone is judging you. Now, this could be more likely, say, for example, this is most likely when it's a significant other. So let me look at it this way. Anybody who's ever been to a trial for a certain sporting action, a sporting performance, and you're looking at it and thinking, right, there's a talent scout there, okay, a significant other, someone who you've got to impress, and that then can cause a real anxiety as a result of that. So when you're answering this, you need to know that it's a negative effective audience and it's based around someone who's judging performance. Now, if you look at it, it's most likely this will take place if the judger, okay, or the person who is judging is a significant other. Second thing is the negative effect of an audience that is judging you is most likely when you have a low confidence. Okay, you've had a terrible run of form, then you're at this trial, suddenly you're getting judged. That is more likely to lead to evaluation apprehension. And the key thing, really, the key effects of evaluation apprehension are this idea of anxiety. So if this happens, it can lead to anxiety, and then this can lead to poor performance. So negative effects, increased anxiety, which will lead to poor performance. So it's really important we can split that and say when it's most likely we'll get this, and then the effects are increased anxiety. And of course, this could mean a number of things. It could mean misplacing passes if you're playing an invasion game. It could be mistiming your gymnastics routine, your dance routine, if you're doing something individual. So these are the negative effects. Anxiety, which works quite nicely because we've got the A there that will link us down to anxiety here, and then poor performance as a result of that. Okay, so make some good notes on that. Thank you very much.